Hello, NetSuite listeners. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the NetSuite podcast. I'm your host, Kendall Fisher, and on this episode, we sat down with the head of vertical initiatives here at Oracle NetSuite, Branden Jenkins. Now, this episode is super interesting because Branden breaks down some of the ways in which we're accelerating our investments into different verticals and micro verticals. He explains how we package our software with the right sets of functionalities, offerings, and partners for specific businesses in specific industries, and how all of these strategies benefit our customers, allowing us to expand our support and expertise across more businesses with the hope of continuing to help more entrepreneurs grow their companies.
You're listening to the NetSuite podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
Before we get into this episode with Branden, I want to thank our sponsor, Hint. If you don't know about Hint yet, their brand is all about making everyday chores more enjoyable. It started with Kara Golden, Hint's founder, who needed a way to drink more water, but wanted flavor without sugar and sweeteners that come in most drinks. She created Hint Water, and I have to tell you, this is my go-to drink when we're recording podcasts. It kind of keeps me hydrated and also has that just hint of sweetness that comes from real fruit essences and doesn't have any sugar or sweeteners. You can go to hint.co/welcome to get 30% off your purchase. Go check them out right now. Hi, Branden.
Hi, nice to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. It's super warm. We're in Santa Monica, in the Santa Monica studio currently, and it's a little warm in here. We walked into a room that was set to, 94 degrees?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a sweatshop.
Yeah, and before this, he caught me actually promoting the NetSuite podcast. We were doing some shoots outside, and did I have a hat on or a drink?
Yep, yeah, it looked great.
That's the one. So always nice when the person I'm about to interview is watching me do all those embarrassing things. So, okay, so I like to start off these podcasts by allowing our listeners to get to know our guests a little better, where you're from, where you went to school, and how you got to NetSuite.
Yeah, sure. So I live in a beautiful area of California, Central Coast, San Luis Obispo area. Grew up there, pretty much lived there my whole life. Lived in Vegas with my family for a couple years. Got 3 young kids. We decided we didn't want to raise our kids in Vegas. One of them seemed to be a good dancer, so we got out of there pretty quick.
Got it.
So went to school in the area, and came to NetSuite through an acquisition. I sold my company to NetSuite in 2012, and that's how I got here.
Wait, what company?
Retail Anywhere. So it was a software technology company focused on the retail space.
Okay, so before we get to that, so what school did you go to again?
So actually, I didn't go to college all the way.
Okay.
I got out of school early. I got out of high school a couple years early. I went to a college for 2 years, but went straight into technology. That
is such an interesting point that I actually like to ask usually any guests that we have on, especially when we're doing talking to, NetSuite customers, because college is a big topic of conversation right now. I personally am in quite a bit of debt from college.
Yeah.
Do you think that going or not going to college has an impact on whether or not you can get a job and be successful at it?
So I struggle with this a lot, again, having 3 kids.
Of course.
And I see the awesome programs that NetSuite and Oracle has, and we bring a lot of college students in, and they have great opportunities here at Oracle because of that. So I look at my kids and go, well, it really depends on the field you want to be in, and college is kind of a cost entry to some of these fields. It's all about, what do you want to do? I knew from being young that I wanted to run a business. And I was fortunate enough to get into technology, run a business, and I wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I think it is so individualized. I think they both, college and no college.
Depends on the personality.
Yeah, personality, the drive, and the skills you need. And honestly, I did take college courses throughout the time that I was running a company. I took accounting classes, I took law classes. But it was never to get a degree. It was to round out my skills.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Well, so there you have it. Because, again, this is a conversation that it's not even controversial at this point. It's whether or not you're the type of person that needs to go to college.
Yeah.
And I'm still debating that in my head. I've been graduated now for 5 years and I'm still wondering, was that something I really needed to do? But
Don't regret it. Just
I know.
Move on.
And to be fair, Jason Maynard, I'm a USC graduate and Jason Maynard looked for a USC graduate. And that's how I landed here. So, all right. So bring me back. Let's talk about, before we get into Retail Anywhere, let's talk about, was ground control before or after that?
Ground control actually was in the middle of that. I had an opportunity to sat on the board of Ground Control, a technology company manufacturing satellite equipment for internet emergency responders. That was in between me running Retail Anywhere. I found an opportunity with that company to come and restructure it. And then I basically hired a CEO and they run that company now, and I just am a shareholder.
Wow.
So that was in between.
Got it.
Retail Anywhere is really the company that I ran.
Your baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So tell me a little bit about Retail Anywhere and what you did there. Where did the idea come from?
Sure. So again, coming out of high school, a little bit of college, I knew I wanted to be in technology. I found an opportunity at a local company. San Luis Obispo is a small community, but there is a good amount of technology companies. Mm-hmm. And there was a company there that did software development for retail. Mm-hmm. And I came into that company. It was very small at the time. Came into it in a technical role, quickly became their lead salesperson, sold the biggest accounts they ever had. And it was right around the .com boom. And the leadership at the time was growing that company in a pace that was not appropriate. And I found an opportunity to buy it out when the bottom fell out. So I bought it out and restructured the company and grew it organically, over a course of 10 years, essentially.
Wow.
Rewrote the software, hired a whole bunch of people, expanded it, and created a great business, profitable every year after I took it over, and sold it to NetSuite.
Wow. So can you dive us into a little bit of a deeper dive into why NetSuite was interested in Retail Anywhere, what they were doing that, made us want to, acquire you?
Yeah. So, I think this goes a lot into my current role, but NetSuite is organized around a lot of industries.
Right.
Wholesale, software companies, manufacturers. At the time, 2012 or so, when this all came about, they weren't focused on retail. Mm. And being a software company that was solely focused on retail, we were looking at who do we partner with, what solutions do we need to integrate to create a great offering for the retail industry. And I had experience with NetSuite through Ground Control. Ground Control ran NetSuite. I was familiar with it. And I looked at that offering and I went back to my development team. I said, I want to rebuild our retail management system to look like NetSuite. Mm-hmm. And quickly we found out that that's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars and not practical. So we integrated our point of sale to NetSuite, and voila, we had a retail offering that was really, what retailers were looking for: omni-channel, in a box, very robust.
Wow.
And NetSuite wasn't focused on retail, so we found a niche where we were the ones focused on retail. We brought a lot of new business to NetSuite retailers.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, it was like, clearly, this is a match made. Let's bring this together. And I was more than excited from running a smaller software company, being part of something big and fulfilling the vision of what we can do in retail. It's been an awesome ride the last 5 years, driving NetSuite into retailers.
Okay, it boggles my mind to think that NetSuite wasn't focused on retail 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Does it boggle yours too?
Absolutely.
How did you even find out that they weren't focused on retail as much?
It's obvious. You go to the website, they didn't even spell retail at the time. It was serviced through our general business group, and I think it's just it's a natural progression of you got to get started somewhere and roll out industry by industry and get your competencies and happy customers, and I think they just didn't realize at the time what they really had for retail.
Yeah.
Nor their domain expertise.
Yeah.
And that's what Retail Anywhere brought to the table, and it's all in the books now.
Wow. Okay, so how many, before we get into the rest of this, how many retail companies do you know offhand that we service now here at NetSuite?
Oh, well, it's thousands and thousands.
That's wild. That 5 years ago, just 5 years ago, we weren't even thinking about it. Good for you. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so what is your current role now?
Yeah, so today I actually run our vertical strategies. Wow. So, It's a newer focus for the company. I mean, we have large industry teams that service these industries in a very material way. But with the Oracle acquisition, one of the key investments is going deeper and deeper into verticals and micro verticals. And we have a playbook for that. We have, over the last couple of years before the Oracle acquisition, we were already going down that path, but now we're accelerating our investments into verticals.
Why are vertical initiatives and strategies important to NetSuite?
Well, it really comes down to faster time to value to customers. Like if we can go into a specific type of business, like an apparel store, and show them what good looks like, show them how quickly they can get there, that just makes a happier customer. It makes the implementation faster. They get more value out of it. And obviously, why is it important to NetSuite? Well, we're able to get more customers, faster customers.
Right.
We're able to provide more value to our customers, which at the end of the day is what our business is about.
Right.
Getting them on our services and them continuing to subscribe to them year after year.
So let's talk about that a little bit more. How do customers, can you give us some examples of how customers really benefit from, these various verticals and the strategies around them? Yeah.
So I think just stepping back, NetSuite is a very wide, large application. It does so much from ERP, CRM, commerce. We serve so many industries. So I commonly refer to it as it's like a mile wide, inch deep. And if you do not position the product appropriately to our customers, they might get lost in all the functionality or where the value is.
Yeah.
So we're all about packaging the right sets of functionality, roles, dashboards, workflows, everything that's important to that segment, that type of business, so they can visualize it, so they can see the value.
Got it.
And get the value from day one and not have to, figure it out as they go.
Right, because why would you want, if you're in retail, for example, why would you want a package that's for warehousing development or whatever?
Exactly. And the interesting thing, like with retail specifically, is they have a lot of business models.
Yeah.
They're doing direct to consumer. They might be manufacturing some stuff, or they might even be doing subscriptions of their products.
Yeah.
So us having a thoughtful package, but it's not just our functionality, our software, the partners that we connect into the application. We want to be very thoughtful about every segment that we sell into and create the offerings, the whole offer that makes sense for each segment.
Can you give me an example of one of these offerings or vertical strategies?
Yeah. So, we look at all the various segments and we try to organize them in a way where we get the most leverage. Leverage with product and functionality. We get leverage with the domain expertise that we have in the teams. We get leverage with the customers, referring other customers.
Right.
So you got to start somewhere. But where you start, you want to be able to accelerate into other segments, at a rapid pace. So we commonly refer to it as like a bowling alley.
Right.
If you look at like the kingpin of the bowling alley, that's the pin we start with. That's the segment, the kingpin that we start with. And once we knock that down, it's much easier to get into additional segments. So one of the kind of key strategies that we've been executing on is around branded manufacturers. So these are businesses that go direct to consumer, they wholesale, and they do manufacturing. Very complex, multiple business models. So one of the first segments that we selected was apparel. Okay, so apparel's going through quite a disruption. They're going direct to consumer.
Right.
They're controlling more of their brand, their messaging. They are dealing with all the omni-channel challenges that the consumer sets on them. So we picked that segment. It's very visible. We all know these brands. We wear these brands. We follow these brands. And we have a great offer because of the fact that we can service all these business models. So that's an example of a segment. But the strategy is, now that we have apparel, we've moved into footwear. We've moved into accessories.
Right.
And we're able to accelerate into those other segments at a much faster pace because of all the leverage that we have with customers' functionality, marketing, everything you do to enter these segments.
Got it.
Health and beauty's one that we just launched.
If you've ever met a famous athlete at a corporate event or gotten an official autograph, chances are Steiner Sports made it happen. Here's Brandon Steiner.
We believe that there's magic in the moments that sports creates. We get customers closer to the game and help companies use the power of sports to grow their business. We've been in business 30 years, and we've had multiple systems to keep track of all the athletes and all of our customers. Multiple systems means multiple headaches. So we made the move to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite lets us replace all of our finance, inventory, and CRM functions with one convenient system. Now all the departments can see the same data. And if I have a question about our business, I can get the answer quickly.
This month, NetSuite is offering a free 60-minute business review with an expert in your industry to identify opportunities to turbocharge your growth. To get your free review, go to netsuite.com/Steiner. That's netsuite.com/Steiner. netsuite.com/Steiner.
So say we have somebody who is tuning in right now and they really know nothing about NetSuite and really maybe don't know a whole lot about running a business. They're knitting beanies in Colorado. Can NetSuite help them go from knitting beanies out of their garage in Colorado to doing other things?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we're solving for when we look at a segment like apparel, where a lot of times, you know, you have a designer maybe subcontracting out some of this work down here in LA, coming up with one product, one line, one style, and they're wholesaling it.
Oh, got it.
Now, what we've sorted out is how do you land and expand from there?
Got it.
And how do you go from wholesale to direct to consumer or back and forth and deal with all the complexities of inventory and allocation. In many scenarios, that entrepreneur knitting beanies would end up with multiple systems.
Yeah.
That they would be trying to manage this.
QuickBooks, Excel.
Yeah, exactly. And some e-com site, none of it's talking together.
Got it.
And then when they look to go from, manufacturing these beanies to doing B2B, they get another system. And then even more complex is when they look to launch new lines, new product categories, things like that. It falls apart.
Right.
So this can take them, from one product, one idea to multiple products, multiple ideas, multiple channels, multiple business models.
So coming from your background in retail, you saw this quite a bit.
Yeah. The retailers are like saddled with these systems that don't allow them to take advantage of these different business models. This whole digital physical blending, and being able to do, B2B, B2C, they just can't react fast enough.
Yeah.
And then you throw global into the mix, game's over.
Yeah.
So.
We talked with Craig Sullivan quite a bit about that, and
Yeah.
he has a lot to say about the global growth. But
Sure.
So, okay, going back, you mentioned, AFA, which is apparel, footwear, and accessories. You mentioned health and beauty. How do you pick and categorize these segments?
Yeah, it's a lot, and I dealt with this, running businesses, trying to understand where do we focus? What actually moves the needle? And a lot of times, unfortunately, businesses make decisions just based off of where the wind blew last, or areas of the business has a louder voice than others.
Well, that's dangerous considering the world that we live in today.
Yeah,
the wind could be blowing east today and west tomorrow with whatever new.
In the same moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we subscribe to a little more science in our approach and looking at some kind of key criteria. Some of the obvious ones that we really dig into is, we look at the they call it NACS codes, but they're essentially the way, the government organizes every business down to an ID.
Right.
We look at all the segments, and we look at every single segment and how many businesses are in each segment. Okay, so that gives us an addressable market. So that's a little bit of the science to it.
Got it.
Like this segment has, 1,000 people we can sell to, or 100,000 people. And then we also look at, that's great, but how about, is there a compelling reason to buy? That segment might have a lot of people, but do they have a problem that needs to be fixed?
Right.
Is there something happening in the industry that would actually warrant, replacing a critical system like ERP or commerce? So that's a heavy weighting. We look at what's the compelling reason to buy, segment by segment. Then we look at what's the competition. I mean, if we go in there, is the competition entrenched?
Right.
Or is it, dinosaurs? Can we displace it?
Yeah.
That's a big component. And then, some of the other things that are really important is if we go into this segment, how does it help us get into the next segment?
Got it.
The whole leveraged approach.
Right.
Does the functionality give us entry to other segments? Do the customers give us entry to other segments? So, all of that gets packaged up into a formula. Then we look at the segments, we look at the addressable market, and we say, how does this fit with our overall product roadmap, our domain expertise, our partners, and how do we round it out into a nice offer segment by segment?
Got it. Can you work through that equation with health and beauty, since we just launched with them?
Yep.
Can you explain to our listeners a little bit how that worked so that it's more tangible?
Yeah, absolutely. So you look at health and beauty, it's exploding.
Right.
That market is exploding because of the various trends that are happening. The natural trends, the organic, the sustainable.
What about the Kardashians?
The Kardashians, absolutely. Celebrity endorsements. Thank you for
right.
that. So these are hot brands. I mean, they feel like software companies. They're just like starting up fast. They're getting funding.
Yeah.
They are starting a business expecting to be, large enterprises.
Got it.
So that screams for a modern platform that, solves a lot of these problems. So compelling reason to buy.
Yeah.
Okay, check. How big is this market? It's a very sizable market.
Yeah.
When you look at the size of health and beauty compared to like apparel and footwear, they're somewhat equal.
Right.
So a lot of folks to sell to, solve problems. It can move the needle for NetSuite.
Right.
Yeah? And then you look at the competition. It looks like a lot of things like QuickBooks and a Magento or a Shopify, just various applications that are all good by themselves, but they have to pull it all together.
Right.
And that's where it breaks down.
Got it.
And NetSuite solves that problem. I think most importantly, though, health and beauty is very complex.
Yeah.
They manufacture it, they distribute it, they sell direct to consumer. So those are very complex business models. They have to have control of their product. They have to know where it's at. They have to know lots, traceability. So they have to understand the whole supply chain. They have to have great experiences for their consumers,
right.
control their brand, and they have to be innovative.
Yeah.
That's NetSuite.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I think of among all of this is not only do they have to, do all of that, but maintaining their relationship with their customer, they have to also know what skin colors are trending more, what lip color is better during summer versus during winter, what, you know what I mean? And that's a whole nother set of factors, to keep track of.
Yeah, and their customer is the height of demanding.
Right.
I mean, they, you are one of those customers.
Yes, I am a millennial woman.
I
am
too. But it's, they expect that transaction to be quick, seamless. They expect, all the data to be at every place.
Yeah.
If you want it and they have it, you should be able to get it like that.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, it's like I expect when it's, when that first day of summer hits, I want ruby red. But when that first day of, of winter hits, I want that darker maroon.
Yeah.
If they don't have it, I'm not going to be happy. But
so, that all comes down to having all your data in one place, real time, online, in store, with your partners. That's very complex.
Got it.
Especially for these brands that are starting small and exploding. Like you said, the Kardashians could, Instagram a pic of something, and all of a sudden their site goes down because they got so many hits.
Oh, I guarantee it. I mean, those sugar bear gummies that they're constantly holding up that I don't think work because I am one of the suckers that bought them.
Yeah.
that could go up, in 2 seconds tomorrow with one of them. But so, what I want to know is does this approach work with new segments, or can it work with existing segments?
Yeah, like I said, NetSuite's in a lot of segments, a lot of industries in a great way. I mean, this is all about doubling down in a segment.
Got it.
And absolutely, it could be new segments, getting into a segment that we haven't been in yet, and being, very thoughtful about how we approach that segment.
Health and beauty.
Yeah, health and beauty. Well, actually, health and beauty, we have hundreds of customers already in health and beauty.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But what we realized is we could have way more by coming to that space with more functionality, more leading practices, really getting deep into their requirements.
Got it.
That's what it's all about. So it works for both, absolutely. Yeah. I think you'll see more of that from NetSuite.
Got it. Do you see this approach working for other companies? Like, for example, a lot of the people that I hope are listening into the NetSuite podcast are people that want to grow their company.
Yeah.
Do you see this approach working for them who are focused more on growth than they are, on the nitty gritty like you just talked about?
Yeah. I mean, being an entrepreneur for most of my adult life, I struggled with this plenty of times. And honestly, I think, NetSuite probably struggled with it over the years too, is like where to focus.
Well, and that's why it's great that we help companies do this because we've been there. We were a startup,
Yeah. So I think absolutely. I mean, any business, if they're providing services, if they're selling products, putting a little more science behind their go-to-market strategy and how they are targeting segments and how it's actually going to move the needle, absolutely can work. When you look at the data that's available about your customer, there's so much to leverage and organize it in a way that you can make intelligent decisions and then hold your teams accountable on this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is how it's going to actually move the needle.
So what are some of the ways that they can see that movement, that they can measure that growth?
Yeah. So it's two sides of the coin. They have to have their data in order. Okay.
Are you listening to this? Coming from a true entrepreneur?
Yeah. I mean, you can't have your data about your customer, fragmented in multiple systems.
Right.
I mean, or it takes a month to pull it together. And then it's out of date.
Right.
So you need to have your data on your customers, your business, tidied up, real time, accessible. Okay. And then the other side of the coin is marrying it up with just the public data. Like, back to the next codes, like, who are all the businesses? How many are there? Are they buying? You need to make the investment on actually researching those segments and being pretty thoughtful about how you approach them. So it takes both sides.
Which American company started with a guy in a garage, was featured on Shark Tank, and now has over 1 million customers? Hint, they're reducing crime in neighborhoods everywhere. Here's Ring Video Doorbell founder Jamie Siminoff with his secret to success.
It's true. In just a few years, we've had huge growth. We've hired hundreds of people, expanded our warehouse, and we're shipping millions of units a year, all while making sure our customers are happy. I've had lots of things to worry about, but I never worry about our finance and accounting because we use NetSuite from Oracle. From the beginning, NetSuite let me see what's going on with my business in real time, from revenues to expenses, customers and orders, even HR. I run my business from a dashboard right on my phone. NetSuite has been my business management system from 10 to a team of over 1,000, and NetSuite will be my choice as we continue to innovate and grow.
Go to netsuite.com/ring to see how Jamie scaled his business. You'll also get our free guide titled Overcoming Your 5 Obstacles to Growth. That's netsuite.com/ring for your free guide and the story of a great American company. netsuite.com/ring.
I want to kind of talk a little bit more about, you touched on it before, but this is something that a lot of retail, companies are looking at, which is, the wind blowing east and west at the same time, and social media and customer and celebrity promotion. Given your experience in retail and seeing the transformation in the industry, where do you see it going in the next 5 years? So the people that are listening, are like thinking about it now, even if they're starting that beanie company out of Colorado, just yesterday.
Yeah. So I hate the word omni-channel because it's so overused. Shoppers just want to shop.
Right.
They don't think omni-channel. They just shop. They want it to work. So so it really does come down to, businesses, retailers, distributors, manufacturers. They're all selling products, and it gets to the consumer's hands. Okay. They need to think about that customer experience in blending the best of a physical experience with a digital experience. And those two together need to be consistent. They need to be seamless. And that journey can't, have too many, stops in between.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing that's happening. The retail industry is going through this major disruption because of the likes of Amazon. You walk into a store, many stores today, and your experience in that store is like a 180 from the digital experience.
Right.
You have a great experience online. You can get all information about the product, availability, things like that.
Reviews, yeah.
Yeah, in the store, it's like back to the future. So what's happening is folks come into those stores, and if they don't get the right service, they pop out their phone and they order it from a competitor, they order it from Amazon, because it automatically shows up in 2 days for free and, out the door.
Right.
So retailers actually have one of the biggest advantages. They have physical stores. They have, customers that want to come in and experience something or, touch and feel these products, but they have to match the digital experience physically.
So brick and mortar. It's not going anywhere?
No. Actually, you see a lot of the digital players going physical now.
Right, with pop-ups and...
Well, absolutely. But it's a different model. It doesn't look like a big department store. It doesn't look like a mall. It looks like a boutique. I use the example of like Bonobos, which is a guide shop approach. You walk into a store. They have one of everything in every color. Mm-hmm. So you can try it on and see it, but then they ship it to you.
Wow.
So you can see everything in the store, but they don't carry the inventory. So that means great experience, lower overhead, but you also have to have a tight supply chain, to service that.
Right.
So it looks different, but it is a lot of out with the old and in with the new.
So what are you seeing some companies do, if you have any examples, to match their in-store experience to a digital experience?
The ones that are looking at unified commerce offerings, not thinking point of sale or e-commerce, but just commerce, and having those touch points be basically one of the same. Of course, you have to have different functionality in the store to take, cash and physical payments and things like that. And then, but really it should be the same imagery, the same descriptions. You should have the reviews in both places. You should have the related items. It should be like the same information in both places.
Right.
The consumer should not have more information in their pocket or their purse. So that's what it really comes down to, is matching up the in-store and physical systems with the e-commerce systems. Should look identical.
So when we're talking about all of this and the stress of all of this, and somebody's looking at NetSuite, what is going to make them say, okay, I can take the dive, there's going to be minimal risk, and this is going to help my company continue to, give my customers this omni-channel experience and give them, and help me in at the same time.
Yeah.
How can they trust that?
Well, so NetSuite's made some significant investments in a whole customer engagement model where we encourage customers to bite small and chew fast.
Okay.
The days of, big, complex, rip and replace, big boom implementations are like beyond over. There's too much risk. Budgets always go over. It doesn't always go over that well.
Got it.
So we have a whole philosophy where we encourage customers to take steps.
Okay.
We call it a stairway. Start with getting the basics in place. And many times it might feel like you're stepping backwards a tad to get a single view of your data, get things consolidated. But once you get a solid foundation in place, you could rapidly roll out these other pieces of your business and drive value. So each of those steps unlock more and more value. And ultimately, depending on how fast the business wants to go, it could be months, it could be years. They can solve a problem that honestly they've been struggling with for like a decade.
Wow.
And that's like omni-channel. I mean, retailers have been struggling with omni-channel for a decade. And that's because they keep thinking omni-channel is like, oh, I just put a new website up, I solved this. It's like, no, you got to step back. You got to get your order management in line. You have to get a single view of your customer. You got to tidy up your back end and then put systems on the front end that use that single source of data. So how do they trust us was the question. We've done it thousands and thousands of times, and we have a process where they can go live on these types of solutions, in 100 days, where the systems that they implemented in the past would have took years.
Wow. Can you talk a little bit to the stairway, and just for the listeners that don't know much about NetSuite, and honestly, and the ones that are on NetSuite, just to explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. So we start with the top of the stairway is, nirvana. It's like,
heaven.
We're there. Yeah. Stairway to heaven.
The stairway to heaven. There you go.
Yeah, we are there. But starting with step one, and it looks different for every industry. We're thoughtful with every industry, what is their first step? And we actually call it kind of a remediation phase. You have multiple systems doing these things. Let's consolidate it down to one system.
Okay.
But still leverage things like maybe you have a good e-commerce experience today. Keep using that.
Right.
But let's get your back office in order. So that looks like standardizing your financials onto NetSuite, standardizing order management and CRM onto NetSuite.
Okay.
All that's single view, real time, and then things like your current e-commerce system can leverage much better data from that relation or in store, but that you don't stop there. The next phase would be let's unify onto NetSuite's e-commerce or NetSuite's point of sale.
Got it.
The goal is to go from dozens of systems that these businesses run down to one.
And chunk by chunk.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
And do we have different stairways for different verticals?
Absolutely.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yep. I mean, with retail, we start with order management, customer. That's the heart of your business.
Right.
The quickest way to lose a consumer in a retail store is not getting the order to door. So you have to have a single view of your order, be able to commit to that order, get it out the door. And then the next step looks like unifying commerce, things like that, email marketing. When you go into like a WD, it might look like getting distribution more organized versus, item and inventory, things like that. Software companies, obviously, getting revenue recognition sorted out earlier in the process. And, it's not all or nothing.
Right.
But it is a fairly, we want to lead our customers like this is a very thoughtful approach to get the most value every step.
Right.
But your business might be a little different, and we can personalize it for you.
And we have experts in these different areas.
But it's all about why not have them start at the 30-yard line?
Right.
They don't need to reinvent the wheel on this
Right,
stuff.
Exactly. Don't fix what ain't broke.
Yeah.
Got it. So what about these bigger companies? I mean, companies like you just talked about, companies that have been around for decades and they've, stayed above water. Can we help them, or is NetSuite just catered to smaller companies?
No. I mean, that's the whole dream with NetSuite. You can go from working in a garage, couple employees to, multi-billion-dollar business running on NetSuite from day one.
Love it.
So that is an amazing value prop that we can offer to our customers. When you look at larger businesses, and it varies by every industry, let's stick with retail for as an example. Larger retailers have a lot of big investments in certain aspects of their business as it relates to IT. So we go with the same premise of, if it's not broken, let's not focus there right now.
Right.
What's going to move the needle for your business? In many cases, it's going international. So a large retailer, we could say, you have these domestic on-premise systems you've had for the last couple decades, in some cases. Yeah. They're kind of working.
Is that a German company you're
possibly.
Referencing here?
Possibly.
We won't say it by name, but go on.
Yeah. So, but let's focus where we can move the needle.
Yeah.
And provide you with a omni-channel, out-of-the-box offering for your, new venture in a new region. You're going to APAC, you're going to EMEA. Now we can offer that solution. The other good example is they launch new brands, and this is just how crazy it is. Retailers with these current systems, if they want to launch a new concept or new brand, many times it means they have to launch all new systems or a duplicate of their systems to support the other brand or the other concept. So like pop-up stores, outlet malls, going from apparel to a cosmetics store or something like that. New systems.
Wow.
So we can come in and say, well, let's take your new emerging concepts, your brands, run it on NetSuite, and then we backfill. Then we start, as their other systems age out or become a higher priority, they can consolidate onto NetSuite.
Got it. So, to wrap things up here, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur, retail or not? It doesn't have to be retail, but just an entrepreneur in general, when they're starting their company off, and they feel a little, let's say, down with just the current climate of the world, technology, how fast everything's moving.
I mean, living this firsthand, do not underestimate the power of getting everyone aligned on the same data. I mean, when you have employees, you might think they know what you're focused on. You might think that they understand the plan, but when everyone's looking at the same data in real time on their dashboards, on their views, you're able to get a lot of stuff done. You're able to get things aligned. Yeah. And when you have data in multiple systems, that's just not always a reality. And I mean, it shows with your customer service. It shows with your employees, productivity. It shows with the decisions these entrepreneurs make. Not actually based off data. So it's tempting for companies that are small or growing, companies that haven't made investments in some of these more modern applications, to just go with the cheap, the easy. Right. But there's a cost. Right. There's a cost to that. Yeah.
Or not in the end, but in a couple years from now.
Yeah. And letting a business like NetSuite, take care of all the technology and you just run your business. I mean, that's what it should be.
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much, Branden, for coming on with us and diving into all of this. This was super helpful for me, so I can only imagine how helpful it is for our listeners. So thank you so much. We're excited to have you back on again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
To talk about a bunch of stuff in the future.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, you heard him. Do not underestimate the power of getting everyone in your company, no matter your size, aligned on the same data. And having a single platform on which to track that data only makes it that much easier. Thank you so much to Branden Jenkins for joining us on this episode of the NetSuite podcast. This was all made possible by our sponsors at Hint, Ring, and Steiner Sports. We'd also like to say thank you to our editors at Lampstand and all you listeners for tuning in. As always, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.